Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Rishtra Dridro Me Bhava Sutokaya Anurakto Me Ha 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 ho Bhagava Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahom Pe Eho Shudesh Oye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Om Chönam Tamche O Gejun Chembo Ngodrusu Gejun Chembo Trashisho Locho Sambo Pagyo Trashi Pa Tuche Tempe Trile Yarngonda Pege Drolor Zampe Tseparche Pande Lame Shabla Solvat Homo a Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timunisha Sane Karma Uta Varda Nyeshre Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om a Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timunisha Sane Uta Varda Nyeshre Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Varda Nyeshre Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munisha Sane Karma Uta Varda Nyeshre Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Sidi Hum Pakyuke Kodan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Ten Yerme Chikto Jingi Lo Makyuke Kodan Dagi Lo Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Ten Yerme Chikto Jingi Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Soha. So, this morning we were looking at, first of all, the importance of having one point of view, of having a vision of what is actually reality. And the first two schools, which are also called the Hinayana schools of philosophy, and then we have the two upper schools, which is the Chittamatra and the Madhyamika, that are called the Mahayana schools of philosophy. The first two schools, they're also called somehow the materialistic schools. The one that are actually looking at external reality mostly. Okay? So it is important to go through these two schools. Because if we go right away to the higher schools, there is a greater possibility of us ending up into nihilism. Because we say, okay, nothing exists. It's not like that. Things do exist. They have functions. Fire burns, things do exist, okay? So it's very important for us to go through these steps first, okay? So I was just reading the verses in Tibetan of what we are, is like the essence of what we have seen this morning, which are in the two verses. One verse, which is from Vasubandhu in the Abhidharma Kosha, which in Tibetan it says, Zöle, Kangla chumdan loi shen selna telomi jupa Pumchu shindu kunzuptu yote tundam yoshen non. Whatever is such that, when broken or mentally separated into other, the mind of it no longer operates, such as pot and water, is conventionally existent. Those that are other than this are ultimately existent. So this was very simple, and this is the point where we start to observe things. And so, what is conventionally existent? Things that actually can lose their entity when they can break and so on. So if we say the first school is talking only about external reality, it's not taking the mind into consideration when talking about reality. So anything that can be broken into parts and can change its entity, it's conventional. All the rest that actually you can break it and make into parts and would not change its nature, its entity, is called ultimate. Okay? Then we go to the next school, the Sautantrika, and it says, Namdrele, Töndam tönchen nöbakan tedir töndam yöbaying, shenyi kunzob yöbate teda ranchit senyi she. And it goes, from Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika, the text says, anything that is able to perform a function is ultimately existent here. The others are conventionally existent. They are also explained as the generally characterized phenomena and specially characterized phenomena. So, basically what the Sautantrika school is telling us is that anything that have functions, depends on causes and conditions, really does exist. It's there, it's solid somehow. Then, but we also have the other existence, which we call conventional truth, and both ultimate truth and conventional truth, they both exist. It's not a matter that one is real and the other one is fake. But one is ultimate because it's independent of the observer. The other one is conventional because it depends on the observer. Let's remember well this definition, okay? It's ultimate because it does not depend on the observer. That's how it is. it is conventional because it depends on the observer. Okay? So, this is something that in the Tantrika school it's putting very clear. What? It depends on the observer. Your own point of view, basically. The mental image that you have, the general meaning that you give to things. That's what is depending on the individual. While the actual object does not depend on the individual. It is that it is. As we were giving the examples this morning, the tree will grow, the sun will rise, fire will burn, independently of what you think. Okay? So, these first points of view are very important because they are bringing us some stability to materia, to reality, and not going into just some mindset where everything comes only in the mind and nothing exists. So we need to go through these steps first, okay? And just to remember once again, one of the very important things of what we saw this morning on that is that the Vaibhasikas say, yes, what is truly existent is material things, also the mind, but everything that is impermanent, okay, the mind is also impermanent, the mind is also part of this reality, but the mind is also in relation to all other things, it's not like independent of all the rest, So, but at the same time, we as observers are not able to perceive anything independently of our own mental image. Does our mental image exist or not? Yes, it does, but it exists conventionally. That's why, because it depends on our own point of view. It's not something that exists independently of that. The problem is when we grasp at our own point of view, at our own mental image as being the actual truth, as being ultimate in this way, as how things actually are supposed to be. Okay? And then we go into conflict and suffering. So, these are some of the points that we saw this morning that are very important first step before we go into the next level. Okay? Before we go to the next school, there is something that it somehow presses me, because we could just go on now to the Chittamatra school and talk about, okay, what's the next philosophical view and so on. I think technically we all understood the Vaibhasika school, at least what we explained this morning. It's quite simple. But then we would go on and we had some nice understanding. Look, the Vaibhasika said this and that, blah, blah, blah. But finally, as we said this one morning in the beginning, what did we actually apply in our own life? So, in order for us to understand this point, we need to relate the actual teachings to our own way of living, to our own way of understanding. So, let's try to get it done somehow. First of all, what we saw in the Vaibhasika school is that there is an external reality, and then there is an internal reality. The external reality is a solid reality which is called ultimate truth, absolute truth, which is things that are in that way independently of the observer, and they are there. As we saw before, the sun is rising, the tree is growing, the fire burns, independently if I like or if I don't like it. It is happening in that way. But we are unable to observe and to relate ourselves to such ultimate reality independently of the relative reality, the conventional reality, which is our own observation, which is our own mental images, the way through which how we see things. So, what happened in this is that a situation happens, we have our own point of view, our own expectation, our own mental image, but the situation is constantly changing, is impermanent, but our mind is not. The mental image is not. Also because when we go really to look in the Vaibhasika school, when it says external reality does exist, that's what actually truly exists, If we go to look from another perspective, what is that? That's actually interdependence, gross interdependence of the law of cause and effect. What is saying? Why things happen in a way? Because causes and conditions were such that it happened in that way. You know? And very often what happens, we get upset when things happen in a way or in another. We question it. Why it's like this? It shouldn't be like this. It should be in the other way. This man shouldn't have done this. That person shouldn't do that. This cannot be in this way. That cannot be in that way. And if we really go and we check, why is it like this? Because causes and conditions were created for it to be like this. If I don't like it in that way, okay, I should create causes and conditions for it to be different. Now, we are not saying here we need simply to, subdue ourselves to everything that happens without having any possibility of change. It's not that. No? The fact is, can we help to change things? Yes, but how? By being a positive cause and condition for things to be different. An agent of change we can be. But if things are in a way, it's because causes and conditions were such to make it in that way. So it's useless for us to stay in conflict with reality, saying this couldn't be like this shouldn't be like that, and blah, 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 blah. Because what are we doing in that way? We are taking our own conventional reality and expecting it to be ultimate. Okay? So what we do is we relate to conventional reality as if it was ultimate. Okay? So remember this clear, because this same concept, we are going to use it also in the other schools. That one of our biggest problems is that we relate to conventional reality as if it was ultimate. Okay? So, can we observe and look at ourselves and see how we grasped reality as if it was absolute? How we grasp at conventional reality as if it was absolute? How we become upset when things are not in the way that we think that it should be? No? That's why I believe that when we talk about relating to reality, maybe one of the very important words for me is humbleness. Because we are extremely arrogant when we put ourselves saying things should be in the way how I want. Why? Because I want. This person cannot do this. That should not be in this way. This could not have happened like this. Why? Because I said so. So what? But that's how we act very often. You know, when we start screaming and crying and, how do you say in English? When a child starts hitting the floor. Stepping the feet, we say esperneando in Portuguese. Like, you know, when a child, at a certain point, and the child, like, oh, I want the candy, and the mother said, no, and then start jumping in the floor and hitting, it cannot be like this. And they say, but isn't this way? No, it cannot be. That's what we do, often. No? We are somehow like screaming and going against reality, saying, okay, not accepting things very often. But all that we need to do is look, oh, I think I had a wrong perception. My expectation was not really the right one. It's normal. Personally, it has never happened in my life that I project something in a way in my mind and it happens exactly as I wanted. Never. Why? Because I don't have the wisdom of the awareness of all the different causes and conditions that are there. The variables are too many. So I cannot really have a perfect idea of what will happen. I can have some idea. And then things will be one part similar of what I thought and the rest different. Okay, let's adapt my own relative reality. But it's so important for us to see clearly our own ignorance. If we are not able to see our own ignorance, we will not be able to change it. You know? Otherwise, if we can go there and we can study perfectly what's the correct view of reality, and we can study in details relative truth, absolute truth, and so on, it's like learning to use very well the arrow and the bow. And we train very much, We have a very beautiful arrow, a very nice bow, and then we go there, we learn, we make our arms strong, we know how to keep well the concentration and everything, but we are always throwing the arrows in the opposite direction of the target. If I lose the target, I can have all the knowledge of how to shoot well an arrow. It will not get to the right point. So, it's similar like to medicine. I can have the best medicine in the world. If I do not put it in contact with the sickness, it will not become medicine. Even if I use the medicine in the wrong patient, it can become poison. So, what makes medicine medicine? When it is in touch with the right sickness and it cures the sickness. Similar to that, I can have the whole knowledge about the correct view of reality and so many other things, beautifully. But if I'm not able to apply it where is my own mental defilements, it will just be general knowledge. That's why it's so important. It's like catching a thief, You say someone that has been stealing money, and then I want to catch that person. So I go there, I study very well what the thief is doing, how he's acting, and so on. I know there is a thief. And then I have a friend, and I know very well this person, and he's actually the actual thief, but I'm not able to put the two things together. So I'm going to my friend and saying, look, we need to catch that thief, and he's the actual thief, and he's saying, yes, let's go to do it. No. And then finally we are there years and years looking for the thief, okay? It's like our ignorance is not so stupid. So sometimes, if we are not able simply to really look within ourselves and direct there, it's going to go together with us. Oh, let's go against ignorance, So for that reason, it's so important for us to have the courage. It's not so easy to look at us, like now we were seeing the Vaibhasika school. How do I act in relation to that? Maybe I don't do this. Maybe I do not relate to absolute, to relative truth as if it was absolute. Wonderful. But maybe I do. How am I doing this? When I am doing this? Just observe. When was the last time that you got upset for something? Okay. When we were upset the last time, was I expecting something to be different and then I get sad because it was not in the way I wanted? And then I want to try to make it different? And then I go back and I say, because you did this in the past and you should not have done it, otherwise things would not be in this way how they are. No? This is so arrogant, finally. So in this way, it is very important for us to try to apply it. And I do it also by trying to use my vocabulary in the right way. For example, never use the word, this is this, and that is that. Instead, use the word, it seems like this to me. Okay, we don't need to say, according to my own relative reality, according to my own conventional reality, you are whatever. Okay? I can say, that's how I perceive you like this. For me, it seems in this way. Because in the moment that I use my words like this, already I am cutting a lot of that arrogance that comes together, that blocks things also. Another thing is never use the word if related to the past. If you have done this, if you had done that, if this had happened, if that had happened, and so on, it's completely useless. Because the truth is that I have no idea what would have happened. Can I have any control of what will happen today? Where I do an action, do I really know what result it will bring? No. Sometimes things happen and we think it's terrible and finally it's good. Other times there are things that happen and we think is wonderful and the result is awful. Even when I look backwards in my own life, many things that happened which I was not happy when they happened. If I look now and I say, okay, if I could go back and change, would I change it? Most of them no. Some yes. Little bit. I don't know really what would happen if I change it really. I don't know if it would be better or worse. I think if we had the opportunity sometimes to change things again and again and again and again, maybe finally we'll go back to the same one we started, So we really don't know how things would go. But there are many things that happened that when I experienced it, it was terrible. And nowadays, I have learned so much out of it that I prefer to have some scars and be stronger than having a beautiful, nice skin and being very weak. So, in a way, this is personally speaking. So we really don't know what is the result that things are bringing to us when they happen. So if I don't know what is the result of what I'm doing now, how can I know what would have been the result if things would have been different? I have no clue about it. So relax. How are things? That's how they are, It's like if I go to the kitchen and I need to prepare lunch. And suddenly I have 3 carrots, 2 zucchini, how do you say that in English? Zucchini. I have 2 zucchinis and some little bit of rice or pasta, whatever. And then I'm looking to it and I said, oh, but I wanted to have fried bananas as dessert. If we were in a tropical country, we could have planted bananas and I could have my bananas as when I was a small kid, we had bananas at the garden. My father still has. If I was living in Brazil, if we told why Rinpoche chose to make the center here in Italy, if he had chosen to make the center in Brazil, then we would have bananas in the center for dessert, How do I know what would have happened, And we go, if this, if that, if you had gone yesterday to the supermarket and you did this, and if this would have been like this, if that, it's endless. And after this whole complaint and this whole suffering of ifs, I have the 2 zucchinis, the 2 carrots, and a little bit of rice or pasta to make whatever I have, So finally what I need to do, enjoy my zucchini. Enjoy my carrot, do the best with what I have there. And if for me the bananas are really so important, let's go to live somewhere else. Or let's go to buy the bananas. Or you build a greenhouse, whatever. Which means, if you are not happy with the reality you are experiencing, you should create the causes and conditions to have a different experience. Not stay complaining that someone has done something wrong about it, or that something was not done in the right way. Because we really have no clue what would have happened if, whatever. So just relax and deal with it in the best way. So, based on that, is the fact of actually developing this humbleness. And for that it's so important for us to look and recognize within ourselves our own ignorance. For me, this is one of the most beautiful things that we can do, to see our own shadows. We can have the strongest light, but if we are pointing it out in the ways where there is already light, we need to point it where there is darkness, no? So I need to see where the darkness lies. So to be able to look and to see our own shadows, that's so beautiful, so joyful. Wow. Sometimes we may get afraid. No. We should be much more afraid of not seeing our shadows than of seeing them. Okay. So, now, Vaibhasika school, external reality, or we can say functional, impermanent phenomena are truly existent, are of absolute truth, while conventional phenomena are the mental images, the general meaning. So we need to, in this context, to understand that the law of cause and effect, of gross interdependence, it really exists, it really functions, and we need to respect it. This is one of the important key points of this. Okay? Well, now we go on. So, before we go to the next school, I just wanted to somehow explain a little bit another aspect. Because the Vaibhasika school puts a lot of emphasis in the whole aspect of cause and effect, the law of karma and so on. So it's important for us to understand what do we mean by cause and what do we mean by condition. Because they're two different things. Okay? So the cause, to understand better, the cause is like the seed. when we plant a seed. The cause is the seed. The condition is the earth, the water, the sun. Through these conditions, the seed will ripen. Okay? And that's the result. Okay? I can have as much water, earth, and sun that I want. If there is no seed, there will be no fruit. There will be no plant. There will be no result. Okay? So, one thing is this cause, which is an action that we do, something that happens. Later, that same action, that same situation, that same object, it will transform into something else. Okay? And this is the result. But it will only have this transformation, it will only become that result in the moment that there are the right conditions, which is other situation. In other words, every action, every phenomena, every impermanent object, it's at the same time a cause, a condition, and a result. Every cause is a result, every cause is a condition. Every condition is a cause, every condition is a result. Every result is a cause, and every result is also a condition. Okay? Let's imagine in this way, if we think linear. I am at this point, okay? I am the result of what came before. I am the cause of what will come after. I am the condition for what is beside me. So let's say, I am the cause of what will come after me. I am the result of what came before me. And at the same time, I am the condition for what is becoming now. For the other things around me, nearby me. So, every phenomena that is impermanent, which is called, at the same time, functional phenomena, it is a condition for something else, for another seed to ripen. It is a seed for something that will happen in the future. And at the same time, it is the result of something that have happened before. Okay? So, that's why we say that cause, condition, and result are actually of the same nature. They are completely different, related to different objects. Okay? Which means the cause is also what is the cause of something is also the result? No. I have something, let's say the result is a fruit. What was the cause of that plant? The result is this tree. What was the cause of the tree? Oh, was the seed. But was the seed the result of something else? Yes, it was the result of another fruit, which was the result of another tree, and like this we could go on. But at the same time, that same seed was also the condition for something else to happen. So they are always happening together. So every phenomena that is impermanent, it is at the same time a cause for something, a result of something else, and the condition for something else, mature also. So the three things, cause, condition, result, it's always going together. Okay? So this helps us to have a little bit of better understanding when we talk about, why it happened because causes and conditions were there. Because sometimes we try to have a sort of a linear view of time, in which we simply look and we say, I have acted in this way, so I expect to have this result. And not always it happens like this. Because when I do an action, I'm creating a cause. It's like planting a seed. Then later, there will be conditions. And maybe the conditions are there to ripen another type of action that I did in the past. Which means, I'm here, I'm very nice to you, and then finally you are not nice to me. After all I did, this is the way that I'm being treated. Why I receive all of this? This is not, life is not just, or whatever. Why it's happening like this? The positive actions that I did, they are not spoiled. They are not done in vain. The seeds that I planted, they are there. But at this moment in my life, for whatever reasons, I created conditions to ripen the negative seeds that I have planted. That's why I'm experiencing that result right now. The positive actions, they may have been a positive cause, but a condition to ripen something negative that I have done in the past. That's also possible. Okay, so things go together. So the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, is not necessarily so linear as we may think very often. It's very coherent, but it's not in time linear. Okay? Why? Because everything that is impermanent is at the same time a cause for something, a result of something else, and a condition for another cause to ripen. Okay? It's just to understand a little bit how it works. Well, so we go now to look at the next schools. And we enter into a whole new chapter. We enter into a whole new aspect of seeing things, okay? First, we were in the so-called materialistic schools, where it's like seeing things as really existent, like external reality does exist, and so on. Now we go to the other part of the story, which is saying, okay, how things actually do not exist, okay? And these schools, which is the Chittamatra and the Madhyamika. The Chittamatra is called mind only, and the Madhyamika is called the Umapa, which means of the center, middle way, the middle way schools. Okay, actually, these schools, they are quite much more difficult to understand. So, luckily, we have time. We have today, now, and then we have still tomorrow to look at it. So, we don't need to hurry up. Okay, so we will start with the Chittamatra school, but before that, both of them have one definition for what we call relative truth and absolute truth, okay? Which is quite different of what we have seen until now. So, let's see here. The definition that is given here is, the Chittamatra school is divided into two parts, the explanation, which is the presentation of the two truths and the presentation of the three natures. So the first one, the presentation of the two truths, it says, any phenomenon which can purify the obscurations by means of being observed and meditated upon is ultimate truth. And any phenomenon which can generate obscurations and or afflictions because of meditating upon it or by observing it as a conventional truth, or by observing it is a conventional truth. Hence, only the emptiness of apprehended and apprehender beings, different substances in the ultimate truth, and anything other than that, such as selflessness, is asserted to be a conventional truth. We are going to understand this better a little bit later, okay? But what do we mean here? Any phenomenon that by meditating, that by familiarizing my mind with it, eliminates truly, it's able to eliminate completely ignorance, is ultimate truth. Any phenomenon that by meditating and familiarizing my mind with it cannot eliminate ignorance and is even able to make my ignorance to get stronger is conventional truth. Okay? Does this help us to understand really what is the conventional truth? No. This is a dialectical definition that it works perfectly, but in the practice it's not so helpful at this point in which we are. So we are going to see it a little bit more extensively. So, first of all, absolute truth, ultimate truth, according to the two higher schools, the Chittamatra and the Madhyamika, is the reality that is the same for all phenomena. We take, for instance, the glass, the microphone, my hair, my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings, anything. What does all these things have in common? What is the same for all of it? That's the ultimate truth. Okay? That is the same for everything is ultimate, it exists ultimately. All the rest exists conventionally. Okay? So, there is one part, and it says here in the other book that I have, which is the book that I was studying in Sera, it says that basically the Chittamatra and the Madhyamika, they have the same definition for general truth, for relative truth and absolute truth. What changes is basically the object, the way how they relate to the object, okay? What really changes is what's so-called the object of negation later. But we will see this a little bit later tomorrow. I don't want to hurry things up. But the example that is given for both is also the same. So here in this book it gives two examples of what exists absolutely, what exists ultimately. And the examples are, which is the emptiness of external existence of any object. Let's say the glass. The glass does not exist as a glass only by its own characteristics. So the emptiness of existence, the lack of existence as that object by its own self is ultimate truth. Okay. The other definition which is given is rangi rangi chebetanye jukpe jukshi rangi tsenyi ge drubetonga. Kyo kyo chebetanye jukpe jukshi rangi tsenyi ge drubetonga. Pumba pumba chebetanye jukpe jukshi rangi tsenyi ge drubetonga. Which means all these phenomena lack or are empty. Let's say the glass is empty. The basis of imputation of the name glass is empty of having the name glass, independently of the name that is given to it. In other words, what are the bases of imputation of the glass? The form, the shape, the material, all this put together. Okay, these are the basis of imputation of the glass. But all these things put together, they do not exist as glass, independently of the fact that someone calls it glass. Okay? So, the glass as a concept, as a name, doesn't exist independently of the imputation of the name, even in its own basis of imputation. Okay? So, any phenomena, it doesn't exist as we call it, independently of the imputation of the name. We will see that later in details, okay? Tomorrow we will look at it in details. But to understand this better, the Chittamatra school divides phenomena into three parts. Okay? And this helps us to start to understand a little bit better the way how it's seen, which is called the three natures. But basically, is the fact of understanding that ultimate truth is how things actually are. Relative truth is how we perceive them normally. Okay? This is basically to make it quite simple. So, I'm being a little bit careful not to enter into some subjects that after it's take a long time in order to be able to close the circle. I prefer to leave this for tomorrow morning, okay? So we will now just go a little bit through the text. And I was just saying before in Italian, when we studied this before, no? When I studied it in the monastery in Sera, first thing we need to do is to memorize the textbook. So we memorize the chapter and then we go for classes. Then we go to receive the teachings. When I memorized it, I couldn't understand half of it. Then you go to the teachings, then it is explained, and then you understand. But by the fact that you memorized it, it's kept on the mind. So, for example, I remember this because I memorized, I recited, I don't know how many thousands of times. So it remains. So when you go to the concept, you get the explanation, afterwards, it remains with you, okay? So that's why also, we need to listen many times. Just to listen once, sure, is not enough. So nothing exists as it appears, as the name that is given to it, independently of the name being given to it. The glass, the basis of imputation of a glass does not exist as glass independently of the naming glass. Is this clear? Not really, huh? Okay, we'll go through it again slowly, okay? Now let's go to see the three natures. Tomorrow we will go again through the whole of this with more details. So, when we go to the presentation of the three natures, it is said, the three natures are imputed factor, kundak, other-powered phenomenon, shenwang, and throughoutly established phenomenon, which is yongdrup. Okay? Kundak, shenwang, yongdrup. So, let's start for the first one. Also, when I first read this, I had no idea what it really meant, okay? Because if we just say the names, okay, imputed factors, other-powered phenomenon, and throughoutly established phenomenon, what does it mean? Bo. This is normal, don't worry, okay? Also in Tibetan, it happens the same. The first time you listen to the words, kundak, shenwang, and yongdrup, you have no idea what it means. Then you need to go through the actual explanation of it. It's like learning new words, actually. So, imputed factor. What are imputed factors? First of all, they are divided into two. We have an imputed factor which throughoutly misses a characteristic, and an imputed factor which is nominally listed. Their respective examples are the horn of a rabbit's head and the difference between product and impermanence. As both of them are merely imputed by thought and do not exist by their own characteristics, they are called imputed factors or natures without characteristics. Okay? So let's understand better what we mean by that. An imputed factor, it's something that exists only through the mental image. Okay? Does the horn of a rabbit exist? Yes or no? No. We have never seen it until now. And I'm quite probably, if an animal comes with a horn and it looks like a rabbit, I don't think it's a rabbit. It's another animal. Okay? But this example is given because it's possible that you are seeing a rabbit pass by, it may be a little bit dark, you don't know how rabbits so well, and then you see the ear of the rabbit and you think it's a horn. Okay, this could happen. Not so likely, but it could happen. And we also use this example very much because since the texts that are written by Nalanda, by Nagarjuna, talk about 1,500 years, whenever they would give an example of something that does not exist, what's the example given? The horn of a rabbit, okay, which is Ribon Ra in Tibetan. Ribon is rabbit, Ra means horn, okay. So, there are other examples. We say Mosham Gipu, which is the son of barren, the son of a barren woman. Or you would say the flowers that are born in the sky. Okay, things that simply cannot exist. So, based on that, what it means this. But even though, can you imagine the horn of a rabbit? We can imagine, no? Even one time in the monastery, in the beginning of Photoshop time, someone made a picture putting the horn on top of a rabbit's head and printed it and sent it to the monastery, It was a whole fuss about it because they were taking it to the debate ground and they were making, show me what it doesn't exist. And I say, this is like the horn of a rabbit. Oh, really? Then look at this, And they were showing the picture and it was a whole mess about it. But finally it was clear that it was just made up. But what happens is that even though the horn of a rabbit doesn't exist, we can imagine it, right? So the mental image of the rabbit's horn, does it exist or not? It exists. We can imagine it, right? This is actually a very important point to understand our own ignorance. Okay? It's not because something doesn't exist that we cannot imagine it. And we cannot believe in it. And we cannot grasp at it. Okay? So everything that actually does not exist, or better, all the grasping and all the mental imputations of things that actually do not exist are called imputed factor which throughoutly misses a characteristic. That thoroughly misses a characteristic. Okay? That's what we mean by Migyu Kundak, which means the imputations that we create with the mind of things that actually do not exist. Okay? The root of samsara is this type of imputation. The root of all our suffering is an imputed factor that truly doesn't exist, doesn't have characteristics, which is we believe in inherent existence and we grasp at it. Okay? So it's important to understand this. Okay? There are things that don't exist, but it's not because something does not exist that we cannot generate the thought, the mind believing in it, and we don't have the imputation of that idea, of that object, and we do not grasp at it. Okay? We can believe very much in the horn of the rabbit. It doesn't take much. Okay? So, this is one thing that we need to understand. There are some types of thoughts, of mental imputations that we do that are based on things that actually do not exist. Okay? Then we have another type of mental imputation of phenomena that do exist, but even though they do exist, they don't have a material representation. They exist, but they exist only as a concept. For example, the difference between production and impermanence. What does that mean? Production is the fact that that a phenomena is a product. Why it's a product? Because it came from causes, it will have results, and it is a condition. No? What we were talking before, that everything that is a cause is also a condition and is also a result, is the aspect of it being a production. Okay? Impermanence is the fact that something is constantly in transformation. Are two different things. Even though everything that is impermanent is also a product, everything that is a product is also impermanent. But production and impermanence are different things. Okay? So, does the difference between production and impermanence exist or not? In other words, production and impermanence are both the same thing or they are different? They are different. But even though they are different, whatever is impermanent is a production and vice versa, but they are two different things. But if we try to see in materia and try to materialize in matter and try to find, okay, where is the difference between production and impermanence? Can we find it? No. But does it exist? As a concept, basically. Yes. So what is this phenomenon? It is actually one imputed factor which is nominally listed. That's the way how it's been given. Okay, Yogyu Kundak, we say in Tibetan also. So, even there are many things where you can say, okay, the difference between the cup and the glass. Okay? Is the cup different of the glass? Yes. Why? Okay, one is white, the other is red, and blah, 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 blah. We can go on and on. Okay? But if I want to take the actual difference of both of them, it's conceptual. Okay? Because they're just making one example. We could make thousands of examples and they chose that one. Okay, if there is a reason why they chose the example of the difference between production and impermanence, I believe one is just choosing an example. You need to choose one between the thousands that you have. The other thing is that often people make confusion between the concept of impermanence and production. They think that because whatever is impermanent is also a production and vice versa, they are the same thing, but actually they are not. Okay, production is production, impermanence is impermanence. Anything that is a product is also impermanent, anything that is impermanent is also a product, but this doesn't make them the same thing. Yes, exactly. But this is exactly what we are talking about, a non-material concept. So we could have said many of them, but they chose this one. If we want to know, we need to go back to Panchasampotasha and ask him, why you chose this example, no? So basically, here, we need to understand that when we talk about imputed factor, it's the factor that we impute with our mind. It's the perception that we have conceptual. And within our conceptual thoughts, there are some of them that do exist and some of them that don't exist in its own characteristics. The imputed factors exist, but some of them do not have a representation of reality and others do. Okay? Is this clear for us? Second, we have what is called other-powered phenomenon. Other-powered phenomenon refers to those phenomena produced from causes and conditions. Why are they called other-powered? Because they don't have, independence. The power is in the hand of causes and conditions. They are like this because causes and conditions were there. Like the glass is what we call shen wang. Shen means other, wang means power, means the power is in the hand of someone else. Okay, that's why here it's called other-powered phenomenon. So the glass is like this because the glass wants to be like this, or because cause and conditions were created? Cause and conditions. So the glass doesn't depend on the glass itself to be like this. It depends on causes and conditions. So it's other power. The power of being a glass is not in the glass, it's in other things. Okay? The way how it is, it depends on cause and conditions. And this also has two aspects: pure other-powered phenomena and impure other-powered phenomena. Respectively, the examples are the equal placement of an exalted wisdom in an area, and the impure worlds, environments, and sentient beings. Here, why do we have the examples of all the produced impermanent phenomena, which here are called other-powered phenomena, Shenwan? Here we have, it is given the example of pure and impure. Why this difference? Because some people may think that once you get out of samsara, you do not depend anymore on cause and conditions. Once you reach enlightenment, a Buddha does not depend on cause and conditions, but actually also a Buddha depends on cause and conditions. Even the mind of an Arya, which means the mind of someone that have just got out of samsara, the very pure state of a mind, it also depends on cause and conditions. That's why it's called other-powered. So it means the power is not only in itself. Why it is like that? Because cause and conditions were created for it to be in this way. Okay? Okay. So the question is, why a Buddha, even though he's out of the cycle of samsara, he's still conditioned to cause and conditions? First of all, the Buddha still is impermanent. Okay? Impermanent. Okay? Which means, it's not because, one thing we need to understand, there is not that much difference between a Buddha and us. Okay? In the sense that, what's the main difference between a Buddha and us? The Buddha doesn't have any more ignorance, and we do have ignorance. Okay? And the Buddha doesn't have any more the imprints of ignorance, and we still have the imprints of ignorance. And by consequence, the Buddha doesn't have anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, suffering, and blah, 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 blah. But the rest is the same. The laws in which we live, the way how world exists is the same. So, the point is that the Buddha is still doing actions. There is result. The difference is that a Buddha, he's not binded, he's not bound to the actions of the past. So, the third point is called throughoutly established phenomenon, which refers, I will just read the text, that refers that which is the reality, throughoutly established phenomenon, refers that which is the reality of phenomenon. This has two aspects: a throughoutly established phenomenon, which is unchangeable, and a throughoutly established phenomena that is not wrong. The examples are respectively the following: the emptiness of the apprehended and the apprehender being different substances for the first and the equal place for the first and the equal okay. So the example of a throughoutly established phenomenon which is unchangeable is the emptiness of the apprehended and the apprehender being different substances. And the second, which is the example of the truly established phenomena that is not wrong, is the equal placement of exalted wisdom. Among all the divisions that are laid out above, the imputed factor that is truly lacks characteristics has to be a non-established basis. If it is an unchangeable if it is an unchangeable, truly established phenomena, it is pervaded by being an ultimate truth. Any phenomena other than that is a conventional truth. Okay, what do we mean by that? The way how these texts are written is the way how I studied philosophy. For me, in English, it's very difficult. I prefer much more to do it in Tibetan. It's 10 times more easy. But, because that's how I studied this text, no? But what do we mean by here? That according to the Chittamatra school, as we saw, the phenomena are divided into 3 parts. We have the imputed factors, which means our projections of mind on things that have characteristics which exist and things that have characteristics that actually don't exist. And then we have the other powered phenomena, which is everything that is impermanent and produced phenomena, okay? And then we have actually what is the ultimate truth, which is that aspect, a characteristic or a phenomena that is the same for each and every thing. Okay? What is the same for the glass, for the microphone, for my hair, for my thoughts or emotions and everything else? What is the same? Only one thing. And that is called ultimate truth. Okay? I'm not going to go into details now about what it is, because it takes some time for us to understand it. If we go right away into it, then we may lose it. Okay? It is called the lack of inherent existence. So, these examples here are a little bit more complicated for most of us because they are in a context of some sort of study of Buddhist philosophy in a more specific way. But to make more simple, the thoroughly existent phenomena is like the lack of inherent existence of a glass. Okay? The simple fact that the glass does not exist out of its own characteristics. Okay? In other words, the fact that the glass depends on the observer in order to exist as a glass. Okay? And then when we call the thoroughly existing phenomena that is not wrong, it is actually the mind that realizes the lack of inherent existence of the glass. Okay? But is the mind that realizes emptiness, is it also ultimate truth? No. So then why is it part of a thoroughly existing established phenomenon? Here, very often in Buddhist philosophy, when we have classification of things, sometimes there are things that are part of a group, but they are inside a group, but they are not part of that group, really. It's, for example, like I was now in Tibet this time. And one night, in the hotel where I was, in front of the monastery, suddenly they start listening, a baby crying so much. So they went outside, the girls working there, they were a little bit afraid, they called the guy, which is the owner of the hotel. Not really the guy taking care of the hotel, let's say the owner. He went there and they found a baby that was just born, left there like this. Okay? So what happened is that they took the baby, he took it to the hospital, and then the baby finally was okay, everything fine, and then and he took it as his own child. He had 2 sons, he took it as his 3rd son. So he took the next day, he registered the child and everything else, okay? So after some time, someone now will come to him and say, after some years, how many sons do you have? 3, right? 3 sons. The 3rd one, is it a real son? Biologically, is it when we say a son, is it a real son or not? No. But will he be called his son or not? Yes. The other 2 boys, will they be his brothers or not? Are them real brothers? No. But why do we call him son and brother? Because he has many aspects of a son and many aspects of a brother. So we call it brother and son, even though it's not a real brother and son. Okay? The same way, the thoroughly established phenomena that is not wrong is not a thoroughly established phenomena, really. But it's in the same category because it has many aspects that are the same, many aspects that are similar, which basically is the mind that realizes the true nature of the glass. It's very, very, very similar to the actual true nature of the glass in many aspects. And it's what actually brings us to that, but it's not the same. Okay? But these are very small details that we don't need to go into right now. Okay? The important thing for us to understand is that when we talk about ultimate truth, it is the ultimate nature of all phenomena, which means something that is the same for everything. It doesn't matter what is the same in the glass, in the table, in my mind, and my emotions, and everything else. That's what we need to find out. Okay? It's how phenomena truly exist in this way. To find this out is not so simple, not impossible. Okay? But what have happened very often in history, in the centuries of Buddhism, not only Buddhism, also not other than Buddhism, people have tried to find ultimate truth far away from relative truth, from conventional reality. Okay? But the only way to see and to find ultimate truth is by comprehending how relative truth is relative. That's the only way. Okay? And if we remember, in the very beginning of this part, we said, in the presentation of the two truths, it says, any phenomenon which can purify the obscuration by means of being observed and meditated upon is ultimate truth. Which means this true nature of every phenomenon, when we familiarize our mind with it, it can eliminate the deepest form of ignorance, and by that take us out of samsara and bring us to enlightenment. Okay? So, how can we get to such an important phenomenon? How can I get to ultimate truth? The only way of reaching ultimate truth, of understanding, of realizing ultimate truth, is by reflecting, comprehending, meditating on how relative truth is relative. How conventional truth is conventional. Okay? Another word that we can use that it's not traditionally used, but I think it works to make us understand better, is that we can have what is called an objective and a subjective truth. Okay? So, there is an objective truth and reality, and then there is a subjective reality. Okay? The only way of understanding the objective reality is to understand why and how the subjective reality is subjective. And what is our main ignorance is that we grasp at relative truth as absolute. We grasp at conventional truth as ultimate. We grasp at subjective truth as being objective. So we need to understand how subjective is subjective, how conventional is conventional, how relative is relative. That's where we need to look for. If we try to look for absolute, for ultimate, for objective, away from the relative, from the conventional, from the subjective, we are completely in the wrong path. And this has happened very many times. Very often, it happened that great masters and great practitioners, when coming to this point, they went to look for absolute in some absolute somewhere, instead of looking to the relative. Okay? And this is something that, thanks to Lama Chöpa, he made so clear to us. Okay? So, this is an important point. I'm not going to go now into details about how and what. I'm just leaving this. Tomorrow we will see it. Because what happened is that it's so beautiful. When we really go to try to understand and we analyze and we look, we reflect upon how the relative is relative, the absolute suddenly pops out. And then we can feel it. And why we suffer? Because we do not understand deeply that the relative is relative. And we relate to the relative reality as if it was absolute. So in the moment that we go through it and we understand how the relative reality exists and functions and works and why it is relative, then we find the key to get out of suffering. And this is so important Because even to understand what is enlightenment, we can only understand what is enlightenment when we understand that it's possible to eliminate our suffering. And the only way of understanding that really is understanding why reality is relative. And then we can see in the eyes of our own ignorance and say, look what I'm doing. And then when we see how we are grasping at relative truth as being absolute, it doesn't mean that we have solved the problem yet. But then we can say, oh, it's possible to eliminate it. That's where I need to go. And then I can believe really in a Buddha. Otherwise, we'd have no idea what a Buddha is. What is a Buddha? Oh, that's the image of the Buddha. No, that's representing Buddha Shakyamuni, which was a Buddha. But a Buddha is much more than that. Oh, so is Buddha a god? No, Buddha is not a god. So what is a Buddha? The only way of understanding it is first understanding conventional and absolute truth. No other way. Because otherwise we cannot understand what is enlightenment. And we cannot understand that it's possible to be enlightened. That's why relative and absolute truth are on the basis of the path. Because in the moment that I see that relative truth is relative, and I see it as absolute, then I can see that actually it's possible to relate differently. Then I can see that it's possible to change the way how I deal with situations. Then I see that it's possible to get out of samsara. Then I can generate true renunciation. Otherwise, I wish something that I don't know what it is. Then I can have bodhicitta, to wish for beings to be free from suffering because samsara when I know what I mean by that. Then I can take refuge in Buddha. Because I know what Buddha is. That's why, it's so important for us to have a clear understanding. It's a matter of years, it's not from one day to the other, of relative and absolute truth. That's the basis for us to develop renunciation, for us to develop bodhicitta, for us to develop the wish to reach enlightenment, and even to take refuge in the correct, deeper way. Okay? So tomorrow we will go through that. Today I leave here the doubts, I leave it open. Because if we enter now it's too long. Tomorrow we will go to understand why relative truth is relative, how it's relative. The relativity of relative truth, the conventionality of conventional truth. That's really the key. And by that, it will make us, it's like waking up inside, it's like opening the eyes suddenly to a reality that we haven't seen before. And then we can really understand what is a Buddha, why we take refuge, what is the Dharma. Then we can understand all of this in a much deeper way. And then it's like something that goes inside and cannot come out anymore after, It's like, it really makes a change. So it's a very important step in our path to have a clear understanding and experience about relative and absolute truth. Okay? But we will go through that more in details tomorrow. Okay? Jetsu lame kotse raptenchi namkar tinle chochur gepadang losan tempe drome sasumgi drove munse tato ne gyurchi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin Ninsen takto delekpe, koncho sumge jingelo, koncho sumge ngodrupso, koncho sumge drashish. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realization and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of it. Korde ranshin tutsa meba dan gyure tendre lowa meba nye pensu galme troksu charwayi ludru gondon topra jingi lo ludru gondon tope gyurung. Samsara and Nirvana lack even an atom of true existence, while cause and effect and dependent arising are unfailing. We seek your blessings to discern the import of Nagarjuna's thought, through which these two are complementary and not contradictory. Shashidile. So now we make a short break and then we start with the tzok offering and the completion of Guru Puja.